Introduce our speaker. I just want to make sure you can all still hear me. Let's see those hands raised. I see them. Yes, thank you. Okay. Secondly, we will receive questions that are typed in and submitted via these same webinar controls. I know you all are familiar with these webinar question controls because you are helping me get our audio running. So thank you for testing that out. There will be 2 question breaks throughout the training, and I will read the questions aloud and Russ will answer them. Thank you all. My name is Julia Linton, and I am the Operations Manager for the SC Launch Program. I would like to introduce your speaker today, Mr. Russ Keller, Senior VP at ATI. Mr. Keller serves as the ATI Managing Executive for the company's Medical and Software Services Division, a portfolio of programs that encompasses the health sciences, Homeland Security, Public Safety, and e-commerce technology domains. Russ joined SCRA in October of 2005 to establish the company's Alternative Energy Business Unit. In 2008, he was assigned additional duties with SCRA's Federal Business Affiliate, ATI, where he created a number of novel public-private partnerships across the spectrum of the state, nation, and international entities. These partnerships include the design and startup of several government, industry, academia, research, and development consortia operating under OTAs, or other transaction agreements, such as MTech, or the Medical Technology Enterprise Consortium, and the Space Enterprise Consortium. Prior to joining SCRA, Russ served a 26-year career in the U.S. Navy's submarine force. His at-sea career culminated in the command of the USS Springfield, a nuclear-powered fast attack submarine. Following his command tour, he completed back-to-back assignments totaling 4.5 years in the Navy's Office of Legislative Affairs in Washington, D.C., where he served as a principal advisor to the Secretary of the Navy and the Chief of Naval Operations. His final active duty assignment was as the commanding officer of the Naval Nuclear Power Training Command in Charleston, where he was responsible for the initial nuclear power training for every officer and enlisted sailor in the nuclear Navy. Russ holds a Bachelor of Science degree in Mechanical Engineering from the U.S. Naval Academy and a Master's in Public Administration from Harvard University's JFK School of Government. And now I'd like to hand it over to Russ Keller.
Thank you, Julia, and good morning, everyone. I appreciate your taking time out of your schedules to join this webinar. I intend to be respectful of your time as we proceed through this overview, and my goal is to preserve at least half of our available time to take your questions. My role at ATI is helping design and build public-private partnerships, including those that operate under other transaction authorities granted to the Department of Defense. In that capacity, I'd like to discuss the truly unique other transactions business model that has become increasingly attractive to federal government R&D sponsors. My plan is to provide you a 20 to 25 minute overview of the other transactions vehicle and highlight some of the features that make this acquisition tool particularly attractive, both from the perspective of a small business interested in entering the federal R&D marketplace, as well as from the perspective of federal government sponsors who are responsible for delivering mission-critical technologies to the nation that drive future capabilities through collaborative, innovative research development and prototyping. Should you have questions during the overview, please send them to us via the webinar link. Julie will collect them and I will answer as many as possible along the way and during the Q&A session at the conclusion of my briefing. Following the webinar, we'll provide a complete set of your questions and the answers to all who participated today. I've organized the presentation in the form of 10 questions involving the other transaction authorities and uses, and stacked the deck in my favor by having researched the answers to the first 9. That said, I'm not a lawyer, nor did I stay at a Holiday Inn Express last night, so the odds are in your favor if your objective is to ask me something that I don't know during the Q&A period. As a final note of housekeeping, I have scrubbed my notes diligently in an attempt to define every acronym in this presentation the first time it appears. If you detect a violation in my adherence to this protocol, please feel free to poke me electronically. OTAs were designed originally to help NASA move at the pace of science during the initial space race in the 1950s and 1960s. The intent was to facilitate the government's ability to reach out directly to industry to get the technology the government needed, but to do so through procedures that more closely tracked with commercial contracts rather than government contracts. OTs were used almost exclusively from the 50s through the 1980s as a means for the government to engage with a single prime contractor to provide critical technology. The Defense Advanced Research Projects Agency, DARPA, was granted OT authority in the mid-1990s, and since then, nearly half of the federal government departments have been granted similar OT authority in law. I would note that although many federal departments have the authority, few other than DoD use that authority with any regularity. Nothing in law restricts the government's partner in an OT to being a single prime contractor. And in the late 1990s and early 2000s, the Department of Defense began exploring the use of its OT authority to connect the government with a consortium of technology providers, thereby enabling sponsors to solicit proposals for their entire portfolio of prototyping needs through a single common set of processes. Today, 24 of these OT consortium partnerships exist, 12 of which are managed by ATI. The remainder of this brief will describe the environment under which these enterprise partnerships operate and how their design and execution provide significant business opportunities for small, innovative commercial businesses to break into the federal R&D marketplace. The key takeaway from this slide is highlighted in blue. Facilitate mutually beneficial collaborative research and development activities. That's the goal. That said, if any of you have heard about other transactions in the media, it's likely you heard about them within the context of making the acquisition process move faster. Everyone loves speed. Get capabilities in the hands of end users sooner. While there definitely is an upside to moving from solicitation to award quickly, particularly for small businesses that might have cash flow constraints, I would caution against seeing speed as the only advantage, and perhaps even the most important advantage, of the OT consortium model. I contend there are three significant acquisition advantages offered by this model. First, the model is intended to attract small, innovative companies to participate in government-funded technology development. The statutory authority governing OTAs removes many barriers and provides strong financial incentives to incentivize small business participation. Second, the model is intended to promote a richness in two-way communication and collaboration between government funding sponsors and individual consortium members that is not permitted in other government acquisition models. This practice virtually eliminates proposal guesswork, maximizing the chances the government can structure its solicitations so industry can understand the need and then offer a relevant technology solution. Offerers are actually encouraged to discuss their ideas and approaches with the government sponsors, all the way up until proposal submission in many cases. And finally, the model does dramatically reduce the solicitation to project award timeline. By eliminating many of the most cumbersome traditional acquisition rules and requirements, the total acquisition times can be reduced by half or more, speeding technology delivery to end users who desperately need those technologies. Because of the features highlighted here and elsewhere in this presentation, using an OT as the acquisition tool of choice in certain scenarios does, in fact, make the government, industry, academia relationship more of a partnership than a solicitor-respondent relationship. And the focus of these partnerships is on executing a portfolio of prototype projects within the technology domain for which the consortium was formed. Unlike the typical one-off topical area solicitation process the government uses to procure the majority of the goods and services it requires, all of which are one-and-done interactions, the OT consortium construct is designed to create a long-term partnership. Most OT agreements have at least a 5-year period of performance, and recently we have seen the duration of such agreements extend out to 10 years. The companion consortium-focused membership agreements usually parallel the duration of the OT agreement between the government and the consortium. What this provides is a long-term partnership in which there is a learning curve for all participants over time. That learning curve enables the pre-solicitation, solicitation, proposal, source selection, and award administration processes to get crisper in execution each proposal cycle as government sponsors and consortium members become familiar with one another and with a standard set of recurring processes. These learning curves provide a critical framework for being able to respond rapidly to urgent operational requests, should that need arise. DoD's authority to use other transactions is codified in U.S. statutes pertaining to DoD procurement. These governing statutes can be amended from time to time via the annual National Defense Authorization Acts passed by Congress and approved by the President. Whereas DoD and individual military service procurement policies frequently have set-asides for small businesses of various categories, OTs do not have such set-asides. Rather, the focus of the rule set for OTs is on making innovation accessible to the government. The coin of the realm here is the non-traditional defense contractor, an organization that has not previously done contract R&D business with the government where the government's cost accounting standards were required. I would note that virtually all small businesses qualify as non-traditional defense contractors, but not all non-traditional defense contractors are small businesses. Some large businesses, like Microsoft, are non-traditionals because they haven't yet played in the government's R&D world and don't choose to do so if the business opportunity carries with it a requirement to follow reams and reams of regulations. In the prototyping OT environment, you can see how the government leverages financial incentives in the form of cost share to maximize the chance there will be a non-traditional contractor or small business contributing significantly to all research projects awarded. These OT authorities went virtually unchanged from 1994 until 2015. In each of the last 4 years, Congress has been broadening the scope of activities for which other transactions can be used. The most dramatic change in these authorities is highlighted on this slide. Before 2015, the only thing DoD could use OT authority for was for new weapons and new weapon systems. There are two must-have prerequisites for a potential funding sponsor to leverage an OT acquisition vehicle. First, the requirement the sponsor desires to solicit must fall within the technology scope defined in the OT agreement. Second, the requirement must meet the definition of a prototype project. This slide summarizes what can and cannot be defined as a prototype project. If there are any questions regarding where the line is drawn between what is and what is not a prototype, the government's agreements officer will make that determination. There's a fairly long list of procurement requirements invoked under the Federal Acquisition Regulations, the FAR, that are specifically exempted from acquisitions made under OT authority. I won't describe all of them, but rather will focus on a couple of the biggest hitters, which are highlighted on this slide. Typically, a significant number of small businesses have not established a financial and accounting infrastructure sufficient to comply with FAR requirements for doing contract work with the government. These companies are not precluded from doing R&D contract work under an OT. In an OT consortium model, the consortium manager assumes the responsibility for complying with the government's cost accounting standards, thereby freeing small businesses to focus on technology development. Second, FAR-based government contracts tend to have very restrictive intellectual property requirements that can be unattractive for small businesses and for the investment community that may be interested in taking equity in promising small businesses. In the OT environment, the IP terms and conditions are negotiable rather than fixed and immovable. At the back end of the process, once the government makes a source selection decision using OT authority, that decision cannot be challenged by a protest from one of the non-selected offerers. Given the increasing number of government procurements that get stalled by protests, this exemption from the FAR can save many months between source selection and commencement of work, an attractive feature for the government and the technology provider alike. The unique nature of the OT consortium model causes the enterprise to operate somewhat differently from other federal R&D programs. The three most significant items are listed here. Because of the significant pre-award dialogue that is encouraged among consortium members and between consortium members and the government, there are additional antitrust protections available to consortium members through the National Cooperative Research and Development Act that do not apply to those situations where companies are acting alone to pursue federal funding opportunities. To ensure these protections remain available to the government sponsors and the individual member organizations, any funding opportunities to be solicited through the OT vehicle must be constrained to members of the consortium only. Non-members may receive subawards, but cannot be the prime contractor on a project awarded under the OT. The OT is not a contract vehicle of convenience. If the government sponsor knows a particular organization has exactly the technology that sponsor is seeking, the sponsor cannot proceed to making a direct award to the preferred organization using the OT vehicle. All projects to be awarded must be competed among consortium members. Finally, and this causes some culture shock, particularly among universities, the awards made under an OT are contracts, not grants. The work to be performed is detailed in the statement of work for the project, and there are milestone deliverables throughout the course of the project that trigger payments to the performing team. These payments are in the form of reimbursements for work completed and accepted by the government, not advances toward work yet to be performed. And with that, we're going to take our first break for questions. So there will be a longer break at the end for the remainder of your questions at the conclusion of the presentation. So if you have questions, if you've already sent them, or if you want to fire the first few this way, I'll do my best to start addressing some of them. Okay, the first question says, I work in a biomedical biochemical research focused on inflammatory and neurological disease. In the past, over 22% of government funds has gone to just government compliance. Who owns the technology? Who selects the consortium? And what happens upon project failure? Okay, I'm going to answer these out of order. So the way these consortia form is the government expresses interest in partnering with a consortium if somebody will build that consortium and present it to the government. So what is the normal mechanism for starting up a consortium is the government expresses interest in a particular technology area. And then consortium managers like ATI and others will compete to build a consortium and offer to the government as its partner. And once that selection is done, then the government can begin publishing requirements, soliciting requirements, requesting proposals within the technology area that's described for that particular consortium. So the government picks the consortium manager. There are no barriers to entry. Any U.S. university or company can join the consortium, recognizing that you would only want to join if your technology fits in the overarching description of the technologies for which that consortium was formed. As I mentioned in the slide, the technology is owned by the consortium member if they are bringing that technology and want to further develop it. If it's technology that will be developed using government funds, then the intellectual property division will be negotiated between the government and the performer. And if the project is not successful, then whatever funding is remaining that has not yet been executed just goes back to the government. We part ways amicably, and everybody goes home. And as far as the question about the funding going to government compliance, the proposers would only propose for the funds they need to develop the technology. And other costs that are outside of that performer's work are budgeted either by the government or some other third party that the proposer does not have to worry about.
So it looks like he has a follow-up question. He says, then is our contact ATI, and is ATI part of the consortium?
So ATI is the go-between between the government and the consortium members. We do not compete for any technical work. We are the process folks, so we administer the agreements, and we act on behalf of the consortium in connecting it and the proposals back through to the government. And I have a couple slides in the second half of the presentation that will address that.
All right. Does anybody else have any other questions? We were also sent some questions in advance, so we're looking over those as well right now. Thank you, Samuel, for your questions.
As far as advanced questions, I got a couple that are related to how to determine where there may be funding opportunities related to opioid abuse. By technology domain, a solicitation would likely come through the Medical Technology Enterprise Consortium. That scope of that technology domain would cover opioids. I am not aware of any current solicitations that address opioids, but MTech does have right now on the street an active request for project information, which provides an opportunity for people to suggest topics to the government that those companies think are worthy of the government funding to develop. So later in this presentation, there'll be a slide that has the website for the Medical Technology Enterprise Consortium. And for the people who ask the questions about funding for opioids, I would write down that website and connect with the Medical Technology Enterprise Consortium.
All right, so a question has popped up on the screen. It says, what are the consortia's areas of interest currently?
So that's a great question, and I will have 12 examples of the technology domains of consortia that ATI manages. I have the website for each of those, and that will be the grand finale of my presentation.
Great. We'll just pause for another couple seconds here to see if any other questions are coming in. If not, then we'll go ahead and get started.
Okay, let's press on. So technical management under the OT business model is not all that different from technical management under the FAR. The government approves the requirements for which solicitations will be issued, performs final source selection on industry and academia proposals, and provides the ongoing technical oversight for all the funded projects, including approving milestone deliverables and releasing the associated payments. The key differences between the OT model and the FAR appear down the right side of this slide in the accounting and contracting processes. Rather than have the government negotiate the individual project awards and issue contracts for those awards one at a time, the government effectively outsources these administrative tasks to the consortium's management entity. The government delivers a slate of source selection approved projects to the consortium manager via the government agreements officer, and the consortium manager translates these decisions into project awards to the consortium members whose proposals were selected for award. I apologize, this is a bit of a busy slide, but it shows in general terms how the process moves from solicitation development through the final project award. As you can see on the top line of the flow chart, the process may, but does not have to, but may include a white paper phase, which permits the government to screen incoming topics via a 3 to 4 page paper and provide feedback to the offerer prior to the time the offerer must write the much longer, full technical proposal. This process helps the offerer write a better technical proposal because the proposal can be influenced by direct feedback from the sponsor staff during the period of time when communication with the government is permitted. All of the ATI managed consortia have a basket feature depicted in magenta on this slide. It frequently is the case that the funding sponsor must predict when the government funds will be released to the sponsor for execution. And at the time when awards could be made, some or all of the sponsor's funding may not yet be available. Rather than disqualify technically acceptable and properly priced proposals, the sponsor can hold these proposals in an electronic basket for 2 or more years. Should the planned funds or should additional funds from the primary or a different sponsor arrive while these proposals are in the basket, the sponsor can pull the already source selected proposal out of the basket, have the offerer update the pricing, and move directly to project award. This, in effect, gives offerers multiple chances to have the same proposal funded. As a matter of perspective, ATI's largest consortium, the National Armaments Consortium, awarded more than 100 individual prototype projects a couple years ago. More than half of those awards went to projects that had been placed in the basket immediately after the source selection process completed. Other transaction agreement collaborations are an ATI core competency. We have extensive experience and expertise in OTAs. Our successful application of the model has played a major role in the growth of its popularity across the federal government, and we remain the industry leader in this area. Hallmarks of the model, as advocated by ATI, are depicted on this slide. We combine state-of-the-art management tools with well-trained and highly motivated employees and a fully committed leadership team to deliver value to our government customers and consortium members alike. The number of active OTA collaborations is growing and accelerating. The model is increasingly popular based upon its proven success. In 1998, there was one active OTA, and by the way, ATI managed it, and we still do. Today, there are 24. This slide is drawn from an analysis completed by Deltek Gov.Win a couple months ago. It shows ATI's dominant position in the OT consortium marketplace, a position we are working hard to sustain by providing unparalleled service to our customers and consortium members alike. This slide depicts ATI's current body of work. The OTA collaborations we manage represent a wide range of technology focus areas, from the bottom of the ocean to geostationary orbits in space, from the molecular level to the most advanced weapon systems in the world, from protection against improvised explosive device attacks, cyber attacks, and chemical attacks, to precision responses to such attacks. The common thread is they all address critical needs with speed, efficiency, and above all, collaboration and competition among diverse teams of companies and academic organizations. If you haven't yet thought of it, or spoken it if you're on mute, I'm sure you're asking, so what's in it for me? Fair question. Here's the answer. The government wants your technology. Big industry needs it. OTs have built-in financial incentives to encourage small, innovative companies to become involved in federal research and technology development. Through an OT, smaller companies can access business opportunities without relying on small business set-asides. They also get a voice in the conversation. They get to influence emerging trends. They find a willing and vast market for their innovations. They learn from big companies and large system integrators. In short, OTAs offer small companies outstanding business opportunities. My final 12 slides list 12 such opportunities, the current OT consortium partnerships ATI leads, along with a website for each collaboration, should you be interested in learning more. The mission of the National Shipbuilding Research Program is to manage and focus national shipbuilding and ship repair research and development funding on technologies and processes that will reduce the total ownership cost of ships for the U.S. Navy, other national security customers, and the commercial sector, and to develop and leverage best commercial and naval practices to improve the efficiency of the U.S. shipbuilding and ship repair industry. The National Armaments Consortium mission is to foster collaboration between government, industry, and academia to deliver dominant solutions to complex national armament challenges. The Vertical Lift Consortium mission is to work collaboratively with the U.S. government to develop and transition innovative vertical lift technologies that rapidly and affordably meet warfighter needs. The Border Security Technology Consortium supports the Customs and Border Protection and other potential customers within the Department of Homeland Security in providing collaborative R&D and rapid prototyping and piloting capabilities germane to the border security domain. The mission of the National Spectrum Consortium is to incubate new technologies that revolutionize the way in which the electromagnetic spectrum is used. Through collaboration between industry partners, academia, and government agencies, we solve the toughest problems the nation faces to enable spectrum coexistence and sharing. The mission of the Medical Technology Enterprise Consortium is to assist the Army's Medical Research and Materiel Command by providing cutting-edge technologies and effective material lifecycle management to transition medical solutions to industry. The Medical CBRN Defense Consortium was formed to advance development efforts to support the Department of Defense's medical, pharmaceutical, and diagnostic requirements as they relate to enhancing mission effectiveness of military personnel. The Joint Program Executive Office for Chemical and Biological Defense established another transactions agreement with the Combating Weapons of Mass Destruction Consortium for use by agencies that have a need to prototype new technologies related to countering weapons of mass destruction. The Space Enterprise Consortium builds partnerships between commercial industry, the civil space sector, and others to leverage increased flexibility and agility, reduce cost, improve technology and capability insertion, and decrease cycles in the development and deployment of next-generation space technologies. The mission of the Undersea Technology Innovation Consortium is to facilitate collaborative, rapid development, testing, and commercialization of innovative undersea and maritime technology from commercial, academic, and nonprofit organizations contributing to the defense and security of our nation. The mission of the Information Warfare Research Project Consortium is to collaborate with the U.S. Navy to research and develop innovative information warfare prototypes and to enhance the government's access to groundbreaking technologies that advance Navy and Marine Corps information warfare capabilities. The mission of the Aviation and Missile Technology Consortium is to develop and transition U.S. Army aviation and missile manufacturing technologies and integrate advanced technologies, techniques, and processes into future effective weapon systems in support of U.S. Army and DoD weapon systems. I'll conclude with this observation. An OT consortium business model is not a panacea. However, combining the features of OT authority that enable the process to go fast with a reasonable level of oversight and execution to ensure proper stewardship of the taxpayers' dollars can provide a long-term win-win partnership for government and industry academia alike. I'm happy to take any remaining questions you have, and I think we have about 10 or 12 minutes to do so.
So we're going to go ahead and review the couple of questions that just came in. Feel free to continue to type in your questions, and we will answer them as they came in. Thank you.
So there's a question about a CRBP process for land conservation and management under the military's Readiness and Environmental Protection Integration Program. There are not any, to my knowledge, consortia yet formed that would address those types of issues, but there's one that is under current solicitation. The Army Corps of Engineers has a solicitation that is active that would have someone build a consortium of providers that would address some of the engineering and environmental issues that the Army Corps of Engineers has to deal with on a recurring basis. The proposals for that consortium are due the end of this year, and I would imagine that there could be an announcement sometime next spring about who the awardee is, and at that point, there would be an opportunity to join that consortium. So a great question about, so how does the contracting work between the member and ATI? So if you recall from the process slide, the other transaction agreement is between the government and ATI. And then ATI issues what we call a base agreement to all of the consortium members, and that agreement basically flows down all of the terms and conditions from the other transactions agreement to the individual consortium members, such that when it comes time to put a project on contract, on award, ATI adds funding and a statement of work to that existing base agreement that's already in place. That's what enables the OT process to move much faster. The base agreement, the terms and conditions that include everything from IP to payment clauses to, you know, the other 47 things that the government wants to stipulate in a contract, those are already available for members to review prior to any time that there would be an award, such that when it's time to make an award, it's a funding mod, it's an approved statement of work, and it's a schedule of milestone deliverables that the awardee must complete along the way that the project progresses. So ATI has the agreement with the government, and we have agreements with the individual consortium members.
So a couple of the questions that have come in are asking how to directly be in contact with Russ and the location.
So ATI is proud to be a tenant of SCRA at SCRA's facility in Summerville, South Carolina. So we're physically in the same building, and
can you provide your contact information?
yes, is my contact information not on any of the slides?
Is it on the very first slide?
If it is not, my email is...
Oh, I can add it to the very first slide.
Well, I mean, for those who
Right,
want to reach
yeah.
out now, it's Russ, R-U-S-S, .Keller, K-E-L-L-E-R, at ATIalphatangoindia.org.
And this question right here, I'll give you a minute to read it, and then it looks like we've got a new question that came in from Timothy.
So, how might you get linked into likely consortium leaders? Some of that would probably be to watch FedBizOps. There'll be an announcement whenever the Army Corps selects its preferred offerer to stand up this energy and environment kind of consortium. Obviously, if we are privileged to be that selectee, we will make sure that that word gets out to all of the launch companies due to our long-standing relationship with SCRA. If it's somebody else, I think you would see that through FedBizOps, and somebody else might fly a press release to that effect. Question, what is the method to allocate work when multiple consortium members respond? There are a number of solicitations where the government awards multiple projects against the same solicitation. So there may be 3 awards, there may be 5 awards. So, you know, the top 5 would be awarded immediately. And as I mentioned, that basket provision says that although we only have enough funding right now to award 5, if the government's really interested in rank ordered projects 6 and 7, they can put them in that electronic basket and come back at some later time, pull them out of the basket and fund those. So those of you who are a little bit familiar with the government know that there's crunch time at the end of every government fiscal year when sponsors are under great pressure to get all of their funds that were allocated for that year obligated. And if there's a project that has run out of steam or has failed, a sponsor may have funds in hand that at the beginning of the year that sponsor thought we're going to get awarded, that now becomes a crisis in July and August. But if there are projects in that basket that meet that technology domain that the sponsor is interested in, those projects can be turned around in as little as 45 days and put on contract. Members of the consortium propose individually, or they can build partnerships with other members or non-members. Only members can submit the proposal. So if you're a small business, you can lead a proposal by yourself, or because of the cost share incentives for the large businesses, a large business may want to partner with you and have your technology be the lead, so that the project team can get an award that has no cost share requirement. And then you have a large company on your team that could take it from prototype and hopefully transition it to larger scale production.
All right. Looks like we do not have any other questions that have come in. In the chat section, I have put Russ's email in there. You all received an email from me with the invitation to the webinar, so you all have my email. Please feel free to email either one of us. Again, we will post this to our website, and we will send out the presentation. So thank you all, and thank you so much, Russ, for participating and educating all of us this morning. Is there anything else?
No, I appreciate you taking the time, and I will graciously give you back 2.5 minutes of your lives.
All right, thank you all. Bye-bye.